Hello and welcome to another Looney Tunes review video. If you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to follow my journey to review all 1000 classic Looney Tunes shorts and give this video a like as well. So this is a review for Porky's baseball broadcast, released in 1940. It's the 292nd in the series and it's directed by Friz Freleng. You can find this on the Porky Pig 101 DVD set, although when that came out this short was unrestored. Now there is a restoration available, but it hasn't been made available widely as far as I'm aware at the time of this recording at the very least. That may change, but for now, at least we know there is a restoration. It is yet to properly come out. It's under copyright, unfortunately, so I can't show you the full short here on YouTube. It'll just get blocked, so hopefully one day Warner Brothers will upload the short themselves on their own channel. But in case you haven't seen this one, Porky is a baseball broadcaster and he is commenting on a big baseball game, and we see a whole bunch of gags revolving around this very important baseball game. So story-wise, not much to it, but that's okay. It doesn't have to be in this case. Now for this review, I'm going to have my good friend Manny, the Toonie Tenor, add some comments regarding the fact that, hey, this is baseball themed. I mean, it's literally in the name, right? So of course it's going to be baseball themed, and he knows way more about baseball than me. Not just because I'm Australian and that, but baseball, it's not really that big here, if I'm being honest. We're more of a cricket country. And as Rob Williams once famously said, cricket is like baseball on Valium. But anyway, I'll go through the short itself from start to finish, going through the references that's not baseball themed, and also how this cartoon actually lifts a few scenes from an earlier short that Friz did. And Manny will mention all of the baseball references and, of course, the musical ones as well, because clearly that's all he's good for, right? Just music and nothing else. No, a kid, of course. But let's bring Manny into the mix. Say hi, Manny.
Hi, everyone. This is Manny Cruz, the Toonie Tenor, coming at you with the first edition of It's Time for Manny's Baseball Time, with baseball trivia for you today. Bum! For the 1940 Looney Tune cartoon, Porky's baseball broadcast, directed by Isidore Friz Freleng. Wait a minute. Isn't it supposed to be Manny's music time? Don't worry. We're going to get to that, but I reached out to Anthony. He told me that he was doing this particular cartoon,
Which in hindsight I shouldn't have done, since I've now got to do more work, but in any case,
and I was like, let me do this one because A, I do like baseball. I'm a fan of the sport. But B, this is also a cartoon that I saw a lot as a kid on Nickelodeon. So this is a childhood favorite of mine. So figured I'd jump on, and like I said, we'll talk baseball, but we'll also talk some music as well, because apparently that's what I'm good for. I heard what you said, Anthony, so, that's all good. I don't know anything about cricket, but I definitely know baseball. It's my favorite sport. I played it a little bit when I was a kid. I was terrible. That's why I do music instead. And as for cricket, nobody understands cricket. You gotta know what a crumpet is to understand cricket. Look at that. I snuck in a reference to the first Ninja Turtles movie, 1990, when Raphael is fighting Casey Jones in the park. You knew that was coming, folks. If it's not Simpsons or Ghostbusters, it's going to be a Turtles reference. So I'm going to start off with some baseball talk, and then I'll go into Manny's music time.
but in any case, well, let's take a look at this short and go through some of the references within. Now, this short isn't the first, nor is it the last short that is baseball themed that Friz Freleng would direct. The previous one was released in 1936 called Boulevardier from the Bronx, which is a Merry Melody short done during Friz Freleng's first directing stint at the studio. And there's a lot of gags there that would end up being reused here, and some of the bits are literally reused. And I mean, nothing wrong with that. I mean, the audiences at the time wouldn't have known, nor would they have cared, but it's just something to note. But then Freleng would come back with another short a few years after this one in 1946 called Baseball Bugs, which takes the gags from this one and takes it to a whole nother level. That's not to say that this short is bad or anything. The gags are actually pretty strong and they're very well timed here, but it just shows how much Friz just improved over the years, where he was really good here, but he gets even better a few years after this one. So yeah, it's not the first baseball short he did, nor is it the last. So you'll notice in the title cards, which I actually like this particular title card, it's really nicely designed, but you'll notice Cal Dalton and J.B. Hardaway. So that was the directing team that ran this particular unit before Friz Freleng came back and took his old unit back. And Carl Dalton would continue animating here, but Hardaway by this point, when this short was released, was already over at Walterland Studio, where he would have a hand in creating Woody Woodpecker. So yeah, this one would have been one of the last few things that the old directing team actually did before Friz Freleng came back. So we start off with the front of the newspaper, which sets everything up, and again, I'm not really a baseball guy, so I figured Manny can explain the context in front of here, and he recorded quite a bit. I did have to trim a little bit down, so he does go off on a bit of a tangent in regards to baseball history, and I'll do my best to make the edits interesting here, but there will be timestamps, so if you're really not interested in baseball history, then you can always obviously skip ahead. But for those who aren't aware of baseball, or those who are fans of baseball but may not be aware of some of the history, well, let's have Manny go through that history and hopefully we'll learn a thing or two.
So, about the cartoon itself, obviously it's a baseball game, but what kind of game is it? It's talking about the World Series in particular, based off of the newspaper that you see in the beginning. So, what is the World Series for my friends out there that don't know anything about the sport? So the World Series is the annual best-of-7 championship series that determines the best team in baseball. So this is the end of the season, who's going to leave as the best team in Major League Baseball or the MLB. And the first World Series started in 1903, and it's been going on almost every single year since then. The 1994 season, they did not have a World Series because of a strike, and there was another one early on that was canceled. But yeah, it's been played pretty much every single season since then. And who are the teams at play? So Major League Baseball, the MLB, is broken up into two leagues. You have the National League and the American League. The National League has existed since 1876, and they were its own thing. And then a newer league, the upstart American League, came along in 1901. And they decided, why don't we have the champion of the National League face the champion of the American League? And that's how the first World Series started in 1903. For many years, the National League and the American League function as different leagues and organizations, but they are now one thing, Major League Baseball. We still keep the tradition of having the National League and the American League, and now both of them have 15 teams in each. We usually call it the pennant because you would have, a pennant, a little flag flying around the stadium saying that you won the championship for your respective league. So once again, the World Series, you have the pennant winner of the American League and the pennant winner of the National League fighting for the main prize at the end of the season. 7-game series, so on and so forth. We also call the World Series the Fall Classic because it's usually played now in late October and even goes into early November because the playoff structure has changed a lot since this cartoon was made. Back when this cartoon was made, the American League and the National League had 8 teams each. And the team with the best record in their league would win the pennant and then face their rival in the World Series. When this cartoon came out in 1940, the World Series did not occur yet. This cartoon, I believe, came out in July of 1940. The World Series would be later that season. But I did look it up. The 1939 World Series was played by the winner of the American League pennant, the New York Yankees, and the National League pennant was the Cincinnati Reds. But the Yankees defeated the Reds 4-0 to win their 8th championship in total and their 4th in a row. It makes me happy to hear because I am a Yankee fan. They've been my favorite team my whole life. It was pretty cool to read up that little history. Now, the newspaper says that the game is being played between the Red Sox and the Giants. Now, the Red Sox themselves are the Boston Red Sox. They are an American League team. They've been around for over 100 years. And at the time, the Red Sox were going through a big slump because the Red Sox won a few World Series titles early on, but then did not win since 1918. The Red Sox would go over 80-something years without winning another World Series. Sadly, they did win eventually in 2004, and in 2007, they caught some steam. And I say that unfortunately because the Red Sox are a huge rival of the New York Yankees. We are now division rivals, but we are also, back then, remember, there was only 8 teams, but now each league has 15 teams, and it's split up into divisions. Where I'm not going to go into the whole playoff structure of baseball. Plus, the baseball season hasn't started yet. I'm recording this on January 25th. Baseball is not going to start until the end of March. But also the Yankees were in the World Series a few months ago, the 2024 World Series, and they lost, and I'm still feeling the effects of it. I'm a sad little boy. They should have won this one. They lost to the Los Angeles Dodgers. in heartbreaking fashion. But anywho, going back to this cartoon. So the cartoon says the Red Sox are playing the Giants. Now, the Giants were an actual team, the New York Baseball Giants of the National League. Ah, interesting. I'll get to that in a moment. And in the cartoon, it says that the game is being played at Yankum Stadium, which is obviously a pun of Yankee Stadium, you know, the home of my favorite team. Now, Yankee Stadium was built in 1923. The original Yankee Stadium was built then, and it was renovated in the 70s. And then the original Yankee Stadium was finally torn down in 2008, and the new one was built next door in 2009 in the Bronx, which is one of the 5 boroughs of New York City. The nickname of it is called the house that Ruth built. And we'll get to him in a second. I already said Ruth and I said Bambino. I am talking about the same guy. Now, what confuses me in this cartoon is that it said that the Red Sox, the AL champions, are playing the Giants, the NL champions. But yet in the cartoon, you have the dog picture with the really baggy uniform and it says Cubs on it. And I'm like, wait a minute. The Cubs are a different team. That's referring to the Chicago Cubs, who are another National League team. And I'm saying to myself, wait a minute, who won the pennant? Was it the Giants or was it the Cubs? I'm going to have to go with, I guess, the Giants because they're in the newspaper. And then you have the literal big giant picture, which is a reference to a real picture. And it's confusing. It's one of those instances where, I hope somebody got fired for that blunder. But, just as me being a nerd and reading into baseball more than I should. Now, I mentioned earlier, I said the New York Baseball Giants because at the time of this cartoon being made, there were 2 teams called the New York Giants, but they played different sports. You have the New York Baseball Giants and the New York Football Giants. Now, the New York Baseball Giants have been around since the late 1800s. I believe in the early 1880s they were established. And they started playing in the Polo Grounds. The Polo Grounds was a stadium that was located in Manhattan, Upper Manhattan in New York City. And it moved in various locations. There were 3 different versions of the Polo Grounds. And the New York Baseball Giants existed in New York from the 1880s, and then they left New York in 1957. They moved to California, and they became the San Francisco Giants, and they're still there to this day. But the other New York Giant team are the New York Football Giants of the NFL, the National Football League. The New York Giants of football, boo, have existed since the 1920s. I say boo because even though they are supposed to be my team, because I live in New Jersey, they are the hated rival of my personal favorite team in the NFL, the Dallas Cowboys. But wait a minute. You're a Cowboys fan, but you live in New Jersey. You live in the New York City metropolitan area. I've been a Cowboys fan since I was a kid, and they've been mediocre since then. I just can't let them go. Now, the Polo Grounds, the stadium that I'm referring to, was also used by the Yankees early on in their career, and it was also used in the very early beginning of the New York Mets. So 3 of the 4 baseball teams that have been in New York played in the Polo Grounds. Originally the New York Giants, then the New York Yankees, and then in the 60s, for their first 2 seasons, the New York Mets. Now, the other New York team that's not in this cartoon, but I figured I'd bring them up, they played at Ebbets Field, were the Brooklyn Dodgers, who, as I said before, moved to California, like the Giants, and became the Los Angeles Dodgers, the team that beat the New York Yankees in the World Series a few months ago, and I'm still kind of bummed out about it. That was kind of interesting because for about, 40, 50 years, there were 3 baseball teams in New York City. You had the New York Giants in Manhattan, the New York Yankees in the Bronx, and the Brooklyn Dodgers in Brooklyn. So 3 out of the 5 boroughs of New York City. The Giants and Dodgers moved to California, and the Yankees are by themselves. And then a few years later, 1962 was the first year of the New York Mets. And in case you're curious, why are the Mets blue and orange? Those are their colors. I like the orange part of it because it's my favorite color. The orange comes from the New York Giants, and the blue comes from the Brooklyn Dodgers. So it was a way of acknowledging a little bit of baseball history that existed prior to them leaving. Sorry. Anthony's going to have a field day edit. This was supposed to be short, and I lied.
Manny is not only a compulsive liar, but he doesn't know the difference between short and long, and yet he calls himself a teacher. But in any case, I hope you guys enjoyed that little history, because I certainly did learn something new. Even if baseball isn't something that I might end up watching religiously or anything, it's still something that's interesting to know. You never know, you might end up on a trivia show, you're about to win $1 million, and your last question might be something to do with early baseball history. You never know. But one other thing about that newspaper headline, and I thought this was quite interesting, and clearly they did not intend for people in the theater or cinema or wherever you call it based on the part of the world you are. But if you look at the body text, there's a reference to Hal Wallace. So this might be from some sort of a movie trade magazine or something, because Hal Wallace was a film producer and he'd be known later on for producing some of Elvis's films. So clearly I was just, let's just put something there just to make it look like a proper newspaper. People are just going to read the headlines anyway, as it should. That's what they're intended to do. But it is fascinating to see years later when we can actually pause these things to see what they used. They weren't obviously overthinking this because Hal Wallace here has got nothing to do with baseball. I mean, maybe he was a baseball fan, I don't know, but still. So after the newspaper, we see this wonderful panning shot of the actual baseball field, which is done pretty well here, and then we see a press box, and I don't know if they were intending to do a gag here where it's like a literal crate box of some kind, because, the press box, that's where the press would be. Yeah, I don't know, it didn't quite work for me there, but we end up seeing Porky Pig, and he's on the radio for KWB. Now, I don't know my baseball history, but as far as I'm aware, at the time, the broadcasting would have been done via radio. They might have filmed a few things maybe for newsreels, for highlights or something, but they wouldn't have had live broadcasts like they do today. But I love the animation of Porky when he's doing the narration all throughout this particular short. And again, this is similar to what Bob Cramper did, where he would sort of push Porky off to the side. But in this case, Porky, he's a main element in this short, but he doesn't play a part in the actual goings-on in the actual field itself. He's just a narrator, similar to what Robert C. Bruce would do on a Spot Gag cartoon. And speaking of Spot Gag cartoons, the Tex Avery ones around this time were obviously doing so well that you'll notice that a few directors around this time, even Chuck Jones, would do similar style cartoons. So Spot Gag cartoons. Even Norbert Cabe did a few as well. There must have been some sort of a mandate or something to do similar cartoons to Tex Avery. Yes, Tex Avery's ones were the best. But then you got a few like this one that still work pretty well. But yeah, if you're wondering why in the early 40s that a lot of the directors would do this type of short, that would have been why.
Capacity crowd here today, and tickets are selling like hotcakes.
You've got this beautiful dad joke of tickets selling like hotcakes. And what are they? Well, they're hotcakes or pancakes, whatever you want to call them, where he's literally pouring out the tickets and frying them. The whole thing is kind of weird, but definitely gave me a chuckle, that's for sure. And in a gag that would typically be cut for television due to its dated references, but ticket scalper, you have a Native American out scalping, because the trope at the time was that Native Americans would scalp people's hair off their heads and so on. I won't get too much into that.
Complete sellout. The scalpers are having a big day.
But basically it's referencing to ticket scalpers, those who would buy tickets and resell at a high price for a profit. And here is a literal scalper. So it is what it is, product of its time and all that, but yeah, that's what it's referring to.
This cartoon has some phenomenal puns in it. For starters, early in the cartoon when Porky's talking about selling the tickets, they're selling like hotcakes, and he's like literally making pancakes or flapjacks or hotcakes, what do you want to call them, with the tickets. Of course, the scalper scene, so people who scalp tickets, I hate scalpers, they buy things and they jack up the price, and they're bad. But in the case of this cartoon, there's an unfortunate stereotype of Native Americans and the connotations that they have with scalping. When I saw this cartoon on Nickelodeon, I don't recall ever seeing the scalping scene. I believe it was censored off of there. Because again, this is a cartoon I saw a lot as a kid. Yeah, and obviously the DVD and the current restoration keeps that scene uncut.
So now we're going to see the start of a running gag involving this character looking for his seat. And I love the background, by the way. And this is one way, again, to save on costs. You can just paint your background characters, and they all look pretty weird here, but I've always loved looking at them. So it's a similar idea to what Frizz did in She Was an Acrobat's Daughter, where you'd have someone saying, pardon me, pushing through and trying to find their seat. And it's usually a bigger person, much to the annoyance of everyone. So he does it again here, and we don't get a payoff here at all. And we definitely get a wonderful punchline later on. But again, Frizz tended to reuse ideas, but a lot of the time he would actually improve on it. And I think the timing here is better than in She Was an Acrobat's Daughter. And that's not to say it was bad in that one either, but it shows that Frizz will revisit ideas that are good and improve on them. But now we've set up the crowd, and Porky announces that the players are now on the field, and we see a funny little dad joke where it's like, okay, it's a giant player who's part of the Giants. Ha ha. But he is actually referencing a player who was around at the time. Obviously, he's not giant like this, but he was a real person. And so Manny will go through that. But I also just want to point out, look at the background characters. Again, a great way to save money, but gee, some of them look really creepy, don't they? So yeah, Manny will now discuss which player they're referring to.
So let's talk about the players that were caricatured in this cartoon. So the first one you have is Carl Hubble, or Carl Bubble in the cartoon. A little bit about him. He was born June 22nd, 1903 in Carthage, Missouri. And he died November 21st, 1988. He died on my brother's 4th birthday. And I was 9 months old at the time. Yes, I was born in 1988. So yeah, he died on my brother's birthday, 1988, in Scottsdale, Arizona. So Carl Hubble was a very famous pitcher. He pitched his entire career with the New York Giants from 1928 to 1943. He does not look like the caricature of himself in a cartoon. He was very famous for having a distinct pitch, the screwball, which most pitchers don't throw anymore. There hasn't been a screwball pitcher in the major leagues in many years. And Carl Hubble, he was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1947.
I also wanted to add that really weird effect of the shadows when you actually see how it's passed it on to the actual crowd there. It doesn't look right. I don't know, there's something about it looks kind of weird. But anyway, another dad joke.
The opposing pitcher, Larry O'Leary from Walla Walla, who pitches all their double headers.
You pitch the high ones.
All right, sport. You pitch the low ones.
Of course, it's Larry from Walla Walla pitching for the double headers. And of course, it's a literal double header. Ha ha. And they talk to each other. You take the high ones, I'll take the low ones. And that's a reference to a song, The Bonnie Bakes of Loch Lomond. You know, you'll take the high road and I'll take the low road. Why? I don't know, but that's what it's referring to anyway. And of course, we need a good blind umpire joke because that's never been done before or since in any sporting game. And His Honor the Mayor is going to be watching the game, and that's a reference to LaGuardia. And Manny's going to actually, as part of the music time segment, he'll go through who he actually was. And the hitter is going to get his bat from, who else? The Bat Boy. And that's a gag that would be repeated once again in Baseball Bugs.
Oh, Bat Boy.
Oh, Bat Boy, and the Bat Boy is literally a bat. Another one that made me laugh.
Here's the first batter. He receives his bat from the Bat Boy, steps into the batter's box, and the game is on.
And the game is on. So the bits with the turtle is repeated from Boulevardier from the Bronx. So you get the bit where he's turning his shell around and a few bits in a few moments that I'll mention. And I really like the way this is directed. So you got some interesting shots there. In fact, one of the shots looks like Tashlin might have done something similar if he had directed this one. But as Manny pointed out, yeah, I'm not sure why this pitcher is wearing a Cubs shirt. Maybe they had another idea at the time, or I don't know. But anyway, the animation of the pitcher is incredible. I wonder who would have done that. If you have any idea, definitely let me know in the comments below. But yeah, we start off with the first pitch. But with that turtle I just mentioned, that whole bit where the pitcher throws a really fast ball against him, causing him to fall away back, and then he's like, that's it, that's the old Pepper Boy and all that. That's all lifted from Boulevardier from the Bronx. But then in Baseball Bugs, they revisit the idea yet again, but this time have Bugs Bunny do that because he's playing all the positions on the field, so it makes sense for that to happen. But yeah, it's interesting to see just how Frizz would, in this case, just lift the previous idea directly, but then improve on it in a new short that comes out a few years after this one.
Two on him. Give him the dark when he can't see Dolo, boy. Come on, now strike him out, kid. Let's go. Come on, let's head right down the old alley. Spot his back. Come on, let's head it. Now put it over the old plate, right down the old alley. This guy's a pushover. Come on now, boy, give it to him. That's the old Pepper Boy. That's the old pitching. That's putting it over the old plate, boy.
And the next bit is also lifted from Boulevardier from the Bronx, where you have this dog who starts off hitting a single, but he decides to stretch it out. And what does he do? He stretches it out. Ha ha, once again. But yeah, it's fine. The reuse here is perfectly okay, and again, no one would have known at the time.
And I like the other scene where you have the Dachshund that hits a ball, and then Porky says he's stretching for an extra base hit. So usually in baseball, So you have several hits. When you hit the ball and it's in play, you have a single, you get one, you go on the first base, a double, second base, triple, third base, and a home run when you knock it out of the park. Or inside the park home run is where you hit it within the park, but you manage to run all 4 bases, which is harder. But, you know, usually a home run, boom, it's going, gone. And that's what actually happens at the end of the cartoon. But I like how, like they'll say, let's say, for example, a hitter hits a ball and it's a double, you know, he's running, he's hauling butt, running around the bases. And if he's fast enough, he could stretch that double into a triple. But literally in this cartoon, you have the Dachshund stretching out, and that was funny.
It's a hit. It's a single into left field. Looks like he's stretching it into an extra base hit. He crosses the plate with the first run of the game. That makes the score 1-0 and no outs.
And they even got the pitcher in a hole already. Did I mention that this was a Tex Avery style short that might have been mandated by the studio for the other directors to do?
Well, they've got the pitcher in a hole already.
The pitcher is in a hole. So if a pitcher is getting a lot of runs off, he's having a bad game, he's throwing a lot of bad pitches, and the hitters are taking advantage of it, you'll say, oh, the pitcher's in a hole. And literally the pitcher's in a hole in the cartoon, which made me laugh.
And then we get the second bit of the running gag of the guy looking for his seat, which was directly lifted from earlier in this short, but that's fine. It works, so there's no issues there. But then we end up going to the batter, who is another caricature, and this character actually was lifted from Boulevardier from the Bronx. But Manny, who is this person?
So, who's the other guy that's being caricatured here? Now, the caricature itself, as Anthony mentioned, originally comes from his earlier cartoon, Boulevardier from the Bronx, that he directed in 1936. But the caricature himself is arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest player in baseball history. Some people agree, some people disagree. It's referring to, so this is the pig when he's batting. It's referring to George Herman Ruth, better known as Babe Ruth. He was born February 6, 1895 in Baltimore, Maryland, and he died August 16th, 1948 in New York City. He was only 53 years old when he passed away. He started his major league career in 1914 for the dreaded Boston Red Sox, and he finished his career a few years before this cartoon was made. So by the time Boulevardier from the Bronx was released in theaters in 1936, Babe Ruth had already retired. His final team was the Boston Braves, but Babe Ruth is most famous for playing with the New York Yankees. Babe Ruth came to the Yankees in 1920 in a very famous deal where the Red Sox sent him to the Yankees, and people were saying that the Red Sox, because they gave away such a great player, because he was not only a great hitter, but he was a great pitcher. And in baseball, you can't be either a pitcher or a batter. And Babe Ruth was phenomenal at both, but he decided most of his career he spent as a hitter. One of his nicknames, besides being called the Bambino, so the curse of the Bambino, the Red Sox got rid of him. They didn't win a World Series for 80 years. And he was also called the Sultan of SWAT. Babe Ruth held many records in baseball that were eventually broken later on. And Babe Ruth also used to hold the record for most home runs in a single season with 60, but that record was famously broken in 1961 by another Yankee, Roger Maris, when he hit 61 home runs. And also, Babe Ruth won 94 games as a pitcher and had a career ERA, earned run average of 2.28. So yeah, he was a great pitcher, but an even better hitter. See, I could keep talking more about Babe Ruth. Like I said, he's a legend. He's probably one of the most famous baseball players in history, if not the most famous. Movies, TV shows have referenced him. He's been a pop culture icon for decades. He's definitely one of those players that will always exist from now until the end of time. And I could just keep talking more and more about Babe Ruth, but Anthony's already going to kill me for how long this thing. I think I'm going to blow up like the picture in this cartoon.
You know that screamer that this Babe Ruth pig ends up hitting and it ends up going in the air starting to scream? I mean, that was pretty much my face when I saw the recording that Manny sent me. But funnily enough, that gag would also be repeated in Baseball Bugs. I mean, hey, it's a good idea, so why not reuse it? I mean, ha ha, right?
There goes a screaming liner into left field.
And in a blink and you miss it moment, you see a thing called slide area, and you see a club with like a rotary on it. That's a reference to the Rotary Club, I believe, and they're like a humanitarian organization that's worldwide dedicated to, well, humanitarian causes, and one of them is to do community service stuff, and one of which is to build new playgrounds, and playgrounds have slides. So I'm assuming that's what it's referencing to. If I got that wrong, definitely let me know in the comments below, but I'm pretty sure it's to do with the Rotary Club and the fact that they did a lot of community services like building playgrounds. We see a repeat of the wonderful pitching animation, and we cut to where Porky is, where the pitcher is all blown up, but we don't actually see the explosion. I mean, I'd imagine it'd be quite gruesome, right?
There's another hit. Looks like the pitcher is blowing up.
And we cut to the fact that the pitcher is most likely dead now. So how about that?
Yeah, the hitters are just knocking home runs and tons of hits off of the pitcher, and the manager's like, you got to get out of the game. But the fact that he literally blew up, I forgot how funny that was. He's blowing up.
So we see the Giants pitcher pitching a slow ball, and we see that the batter actually misses a few times and ends up hitting it. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Freeling remembered that when he was doing baseball bugs, because they would expand on that idea there, where you'd have multiple hitters trying to hit the ball, where it's like 1, 2, 3, you're out. 1, 2, 3, you're out.
Same with my slow ball.
1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out.
Whereas here it's just 1, 2, and then he ends up hitting it. But it's interesting that we see from Porky's point of view, where he is commenting on the game, but we don't actually see what's happening. But it's actually done really well here, because the actual punchline of this is rather effective, where we see this player being all dramatic because he's literally trapped. Why is there a giant mousetrap on the field? Who knows? But it's funny in any case. And of course, listening to Mel Blanc being so overdramatic like he is here is always a treat.
The runner is trapped when the runner's trying to go to third base, and he has a mousetrap. I LOL did that part. The puns here, I know Anthony will relish any opportunity at puns and dad jokes. And of course, you can't deny the amazing line read from Mel Blanc when he's in the mousetrap. This is horrible. Kills me every time I hear it.
Trapped. Trapped. Trapped like a rat. Oh, this is horrible. Oh, it's absolutely horrible.
So we then get a montage, and Porky establishes that this is an excellent baseball game, it's really thrilling, and we get a punchline to that patron looking for his seed in more ways than one. I don't know why it's taken him this long to actually find it towards the end of the game, but anyway, we'll put that aside. So he finally found his seat, and he's behind a pole, which I would imagine would be a great annoyance for a lot of people, especially back then when a lot of stadiums had poles to hold up the roof to get out of the rain and all that, whereas these days a lot of stadiums are designed to not have poles in the way like that. So we end up not actually seeing what happens at all. We're just hearing Porky's wonderful narration as to what's happening in this brilliant game, and even we don't even see what actually happens here. It's all left to our imagination.
The pitch, right over the net. It's a hit! A long fly into center field. It's going, and it's a goner! And it's all over. The Giants win.
And sure enough, yeah, this patron who's finally found his seat after all this time ends up missing the greatest moment in, well, what sounds like to be one of the greatest baseball games of all time. And we get the extra punchline at the end where this patron gets so angry that he just, rips things up, and we end right there. So it's an excellent ending. So you get 2 punchlines for the price of 1. But the baseball game ends up in a very thrilling way, even though we don't end up getting to see it. And that's okay, because it's part of the punchline. But we also get the punchline of the rule of 3, which is the patron looking for his seat. But now Manny is going to go through the music cues and also a few other bits and pieces.
Shall we talk about music now? It's been over a half hour. Oh my goodness. Brevity, Manny. Brevity. Anywho, it's time for... I won't do the theme song again. So, let's talk about the cues. There's not a lot. Hopefully. Don't kill me, Anthony. Please, please, please. He's going to do a wild pitch. He's going to throw the ball, and it's going to hit me in the head. So, nice little wild pitch there. All right, music direction, Carl Stalling. We know that he started in 1936, and he's doing phenomenal work in this cartoon. So during the opening titles, you hear the song Sing, You Son of a Gun by Johnny Mercer and Richard Whiting. You also hear it when Porky starts his broadcast, when he's talking this and that, introducing the game and setting up the scene. If you want to know more information about Johnny Mercer, as well as a little bit on Richard Whiting, please check out the commentary I did for Porky at the Crocodero. Now, another song you hear throughout the cartoon is Frat, or of course, when I hear it, I always think of the Father's Day song from A Bear for Punishment.
Put it right in there, old kid. Ah, come on, let's give that arc now. Right down the middle, old boy. Right in the groove, old kid. Come on, old boy. You can't see it all, kid. Pitch right one in there. Hey, old boy. Let it roll. Come on, boy. Right a little pepper in there. That's a pitch.
That was written by J.F. Barth, and if you want to know more about him, please check out the commentary I did for A Long Flirtation Walk. Now, in the scene where you have the double header, ha 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 ha, another dad joke. So a double header means when you play two games in the same day, because let's say you have a game on Tuesday, a game on Wednesday. The Tuesday game, they don't play it because of inclement weather, usually rain. They just play two games on Wednesday. So during that scene, you hear the Bonnie Banks O Loch Lomond.
You pitch the high ones.
All right, sport. You pitch the low ones. Okay.
That is a Scottish folk song dating back from around the 1740s. Now, Bonnie means beautiful or fair, and Loch is lake in Scots. So, the beautiful banks of Lake Lomond. And that's dun 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 dun. Or I always think of the Lone Stranger and Porky. I'll take the high road and you take the low road, and I'll get to Scotland before you. So on and so forth. Now, the next cue you hear is Three Blind Mice, which I sang it as a kid, and many of us have sang it as a kid. It's an English nursery rhyme, which seems to have been published in the year 1609 in a book that was edited by a man named Thomas Ravenscroft. But the version that we're more familiar with, three blind mice, see how they run, da-da-da-da, was published in a kid's book in 1842. Now, why do you hear it? It's because in this scene, the umpire literally is blind. He has a cane and he has sunglasses, and he's accompanied by a seeing eye dog, because it's the whole joke, or, you know, the whole stereotype of baseball umpires being blind, meaning that they make lousy calls. So, you know, the pitcher throws, and instead of calling it a ball, he calls it a strike, or instead of calling it a strike, he calls it a ball. And then the players argue with the umpire and the manager, and then, of course, the umpire throws him out. So, hey, ump, you're blind, meaning he's doing a lousy job at his job. So, you know, not like we have any umpires in baseball that are like that now. Angel Hernandez. But, oh, did I say that too loud? Yeah, he's not a good umpire. Terrible umpire. But anywho, I digress. So the final cue that is published in the cue sheet that you hear is Yankee Doodle, which is a famous nursery rhyme with patriotic lyrics dating back to the time of the American Revolution in the 1700s. I'm going to save going more into depth for that song because A, this is already longer than I thought it would be, and B, I want to save this for a later Manny's Music time. What cartoon in particular that's very patriotic that features Yankee Doodle would this fit in? That might also have Porky Pig in it. Can't seem to think of it in the moment. So you hear Yankee Doodle in the scene where you see a caricature of a short man throwing out the ceremonial first pitch.
Honor, the mayor will throw out the first ball.
And who was that short man? That was the mayor of New York City, Fiorello LaGuardia. And one of the three major airports in this area is named after him, LaGuardia Airport. But I'll let Anthony handle that. I've done my welcome.
Fine, I'll briefly mention him. I thought you might have, but okay, I guess I'll have to do it. So yeah, it's a reference to Fiorello Henry LaGuardia, and he was the 99th mayor of New York City between 1934 to 1946, and by many accounts, he was a well-beloved mayoral figure. I mean, of course, they even named an airport after him, for crying out loud. But even in later years, when they'll look at things in hindsight when it comes to mayors, you know, the stuff that he did right, stuff that he did wrong, and apparently A panel in 1993 has ranked him as the best big city mayor in American history. So it looks like he was not only beloved, but was beloved with good reason. He would cross party lines. So he was a politician from a relatively young age, and he died at the age of 64 just after World War II, so in 1947.
Now, there's one other thing that I want to mention that is not in a cue sheet, but there is a particular cue in this cartoon, and the main reason why I wanted to record it is because of the running joke of the very polite dog. Pardon, pardon, pardon. Oh my goodness. Even when I was a kid, there was just something about the way that Mel Blanc does his voice, the character design of this chubby dog that kind of gives me a little vibes of Droopy from MGM with a little bowler derby and whatnot. But in particular, it's the music cue that kills me. I love that cue. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-dun, da-dun, da-da. Now, that is not a cue like a song like the ones I mentioned before. It seems to be an original that was composed by Carl Stalling himself. This cue, I don't know the name of it. I wish eventually I get access to the original cue sheets, somewhere in the Warner archives, whatever, because I want to get more information about it. So you hear that, and it's just, I don't know, there's something about that specific cue that I love so much, and it's the same cue that's used in another Freeling short, Porky's Hired Hand, when you hear Gregory, he ain't neat, and it's the same musical cue that he used. And it's from the scene where the fox is stealing chickens in that cartoon. But yeah, there's just something about it. I'm like, oh, I wish I knew there was a name to this specific cue. And it also sounds a little similar to the beginning of A Wild Hare when Bugs Bunny first meets Elmer Fudd.
What's up, Doc? Shh, there's a wabbit down there, and I'm trying to catch him.
So that cue, it's not in the same key. This cue from Porky's baseball broadcast is in the key of C, whereas the other one sounds more or less in the key of G from the Wild Hare, but they sound similar in some ways. And I know, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was either Devin Baxter or S.C. McPeter mentioned that cue is similar to some of the stuff that Stalling was doing when he worked at the iWorks studio. But again, if I have access to the actual cue sheets and see what they would call this specific cue, I just call it the C minor Stalling cue that was used in Porky Pig cartoons. But it's just, I love hearing it. I never get tired of it. And of course, the great payoff at the end where the dog sits down. He misses the end of the game on a 3-2 count, home run, a walk-off home run to win the game. Phenomenal way to end the World Series. And he flips out and he rips off the support beam and starts destroying the seats. And yeah, just insanity, but I love it. Wow, this was way longer than I thought. So thanks for listening for my thoughts for Porky's baseball broadcast, a childhood favorite. I got to geek out on some baseball, talk a little bit about music, and Anthony, again, he's actually going to just club me over the head with a bat. Or in this case, actually, he's going to use a cricket bat, like in the first Ninja Turtles movie when Casey Jones hits Raphael with the cricket bat. So thanks for listening. You could always follow me on social media at the Toony Tenor, TheToonyTenor, for my updates on my life as a professional musician, a multifaceted geek, and a baseball fan. Baseball season's coming soon. Hopefully the Yankees will win their 28th World Series this upcoming season. They were so close a few months ago. The Yankees last won the World Series in 2009. So it's been a bit of a wait. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. And play ball. Oh, and that's all, folks.
Thank you, Manny. And yes, I'm going to get that cricket bat ready for that one time you come to visit. But what about the show itself? I like this one. It's not some undiscovered masterpiece or anything. I mean, Freeling will do this idea way better in Baseball Bugs. He will take the ideas that were in Boulevardier from the Bronx and also Baseball Broadcast, and he would refine things to perfection in Baseball Bugs. But honestly, all three shorts are great. This one, look, if it's on TV, I'll definitely watch it. The gags are funny and it's full of dad jokes. I love dad jokes. People who've followed me for a while now definitely know that. Is it perfect? Perhaps not, but honestly, it's fine for what it is. I think this was Freeling taking on an idea that was started by a different crew and then adding his own touch to it. Maybe that's why there's all those little puns in there. Maybe that was from Hardaway who wrote this short. I don't know. But in any case, this one gets 8 out of 10. It's fun, and it's one that's been beautifully restored now, and hopefully that version will make its way on physical media at some point. But that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, play ball!
That's all, folks.